So in this unit, I'm going to talk to you about financial analysis. And I know this can be a very turgid subject, but it is very important for a consultant or an advisor, and when you're looking at a particular project, to understand what the impact is on the financials of the organization. And when I talk about the financials of an organization, it's much more than just the revenue and the cost. It really is looking all the way down to the impact ultimately for an organization that is listed on the stock exchange at the impact on the share price. So a great place to start for you here is there's an ASX website where they actually teach you quite a lot about what the different aspects of financial analysis are all about. The ASX, the Australian Stock Exchange, has some of these training programs. And I've just got one here on the slide that just is a great introduction to what is a PE ratio, what are some of the key ratios that financial analysts need to be looking at to understand how a company is tracking. On the next slide, I talk to you a little bit more detail about the different aspects of financial analysis. Starting off with the price ratios. Is the stock price reasonable? Moving into things like profitability, liquidity ratios, and a whole range of others. I'd really encourage you to dig into this. I've got a link at the bottom here to a very, very good article on the 15 financial ratios every investor should use. I believe this is really important because at the end of the day, every single one of us inevitably owns some form of share. And so we need to understand how is that share performing. And the more that we can understand some of these ratios, so we'll get a much better view of how that company is performing. Now I want to take you into a little bit more detail, the impact of your initiatives on the financial performance of an organization. Because as I said earlier on, it's important to understand that you're not just impacting revenue and cost, you're impacting the profit of the organization, and by impacting the profit of an organization, you impact the share price of an organization. Now, obviously, if you're an organization that isn't listed on the stock exchange, you're not so worried about share price. But you still need to recognize the impact of your initiatives on the profit of the organization. Are you increasing revenue, taking cost out, and therefore you will be increasing the profit of the organization? But let's take that a step further. So the classic scenario that we have here, any organization's profit and loss sheet basically starts off with the revenue minus the costs gives us the profit. And then what the organizations start talking about is this thing called earnings per share. How do we calculate the earnings per share? Very simple indeed. It's basically the earnings that we've got, the profit that we've got, divided by the number of shares that have actually been issued. So if you've got $1 billion of profit, you've got 1 billion shares out there, basically your earnings per share is $1. Very simple maths indeed. But then having got the earnings per share, so what? How does this impact the share price? It's basically the equation, your share price divided by your earnings per share gives you this wonderful thing called the PE ratio, the price earnings ratio. Really important to understand that price earnings ratio. Because at the end of the day, you in an organization can absolutely impact the profit that you've got and therefore your earnings per share. The PE ratio is quite frankly an assessment of the sentiment of the market about your particular organization and quite often your industry. So if I look at certain industries today, you'll find that certain industries like the technology industry, the PEs are very high because people are looking for long-term future growth in those particular industries. But if I take the banking industry as an opposite of that, basically they're pretty static at the moment, so they'll have a PE of maybe somewhere around 10 to 15. And that then impacts on the share price. So to be able to understand all of these numbers can really help you understand the impact on the share price of your particular initiatives. So we don't need to go through all the maths here, but you can just see that if we can increase the earnings, our PE ratio basically stays the same, we will be increasing the share price. Very simple maths that connects it all. I'd really encourage you as you're going through your project, as you're going through your initiatives, to try and draw that line, particularly for a quoted organization. Basically, what is the impact of our project on that profit, and what does this now mean to the share price? You'll quite often find something like a 10% increase in revenue in an organization can double the profit, which will double the share price. So a minor change at that revenue and cost line can make a significant difference when you get down to the share price. I know this is a complex subject, but I'd really encourage you to have a go at trying to work out the impact of your projects on the share price of the organization.